Good afternoon and welcome to the first live cast from SLTI of this academic year. And we've decided to talk today about community, building community and its trials and tribulations, because let's not pretend that this is something that comes easily or naturally. That's why we've called it blood, toil, tears and community. It's difficult. But why do we do it? What's the benefits of it? And the first benefit is it's part of the soul baseline. It's important for that reason. It's around tutor presence, it's about communication, it's about people feeling that they're part of a course and part of the university. And that sense of belonging is so important, especially when you have part-time students or commuter students or anybody who hasn't quite found their place. We need to give them that place so that they feel that they truly belong in the university. So with me here today to talk about community, how we build it and the challenges involved, I'm really pleased to welcome two special guests. We have Dr. Carol Davis, who's the Head of Academic Development at the Warsash School of Maritime Science and Engineering. And we also have Denise White, who's the course leader for HNC Built Environment and also the Construction Management degree as well, which is in the School of Art, Design and Fashion. So first of all, thank you very much for your time and coming along to talk about this.
You're welcome.
I think hopefully have plenty of insights that are going to prove useful to our colleagues. But first of all, what does generally community mean to you, would you say?
So, it's such a good question, because community means everything and yet it means nothing. So I can tell you what it means to me on a personal level. So it means safe, it means to be included, it means to be heard, it means to be seen. It's people I coexist alongside with, people like me. We share common ground and shared values, and if we bring that concept into the learning environment in a more nuanced way, and I work in a particular school which is vocational, it's about practical application. So it's communities of practice which are vocational in their nature, but also there's other types of community within the learning environment. It's defined by ethnicity, by race, religion, gender, class, and that should not be forgotten. It's also about shared values and shared experience, and we try to create communities in classrooms from very diverse groups often.
Yeah, for me, community is very much about belonging. So it's with the construction sort of management courses and the built environment, about 70% of them are part-time students. So actually, while it's trying to give them, becoming part of being a student community, because they often don't actually feel, whilst they are students, they flight in for one day and they come out. So they don't feel like they are part of the university community, really. But also because they are working in industry, the construction industry is actually a really small community.
Right.
And where you go work from company to company, you see the same faces constantly. So it's actually a really nice way to bring different companies together and get them to share their ideas, get them to share their practice. So we've got, again, that different circles of community. We also put our full-time and part-time students together. So actually our full-timers can learn from the part-timers and what they're doing in industry, and also vice versa, the part-timers get a good insight from the full-timers about what it means to be a student as well on the academic side. But it gives them ownership. If they're part of a community, I feel very much that they feel more ownership to their own learning and to the course itself as well.
So they're more invested in what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Because they care about it. It actually means something to them.
Yeah, and I think that's such an excellent point, Denise, because we find that our subject areas are quite similar, and industry coming in. We had a workshop only the other week for full-time, part-time students, and we had excellent attendance. And it's back to that that common ground. It's about networking. It's about the purpose of the education, but also bringing students who have graduated in is also extremely powerful, because you cannot be what you cannot see.
Nice.
So I love that, and I think working in those kinds of applied subjects really work. I would point out that many of our courses in Warsash Maritime are not the standard undergraduate and postgraduate courses. They're very short courses, sometimes of 1 week, 2 week duration. So how you kind of construct that sense of community in that context is very different, and it will be, as Denise says, around the kind of this is our industry, this is our subject, this is what we love. We have chosen to work in construction or engineering or nautical science.
And that industry link is vital, because I've just literally done an hour ago an award ceremony for a sponsored unit where we have a company come in and they award prizes for the best students in that unit.
So nice.
And it's lovely. And actually, we were just there and they were telling them about what they learned, and they're both working. One was a full-time student, one was a part-time, but they're both working in the industry. And they were saying actually how they've used the skills and techniques, and they were telling them about it. And it's nice for the students to feel actually the industry as well. It's not just us who is recognising their talents, but the industry is saying, yeah, you've done a really good job, because most often we get the industry to be the judges of the prize or the winning. So
there's something there, isn't there, about that burgeoning sense of professional identity. And is this something that you deliberately inculcate very early on in the course? Is it something that emerges? Is it important? How important is it?
Yeah, I think it's important, but it's not the only thing that's important. You have to make people feel known as individuals, and also
so they're
that
not
they
just
are
an engineer. They're not just in construction.
Absolutely, and there are many different kinds of engineers or people who work in construction. So I think absolutely fundamental is the conditions that you create in class and online, because a lot of the learning is done online via Soul. I'm doing a project at the moment looking at student engagement with Soul and what more we can do to being inclusive and create these democratic processes online.
Yeah. I mean, we embed it from the word go, really. The industry links is crucial for us, but like you say, it's not just what it's about. Actually, it's about them being a community amongst themselves as well, and certainly for the part-timers, to be a community with the university, because they've got so many pressures, and they've got their work life and their home life as well as their study life. And actually, it's being able to find that balance and being able to find somebody else who they can share that stress with, because at work, their colleagues have just got that work-home balance, and at home they're not having the three-pronged attack as well. So it's just finding somebody that you can talk to and say, actually, you know what, I felt the same. It's been a tough week.
And I was just thinking about a group of deck cadets on an HND program I spent this morning with. I was privileged to observe their presentations, and they range in age from 17 to 31. Some have experience in the maritime industry, others don't. There's a small percentage of women in the group. Probably their ethnicity and religion are fairly homogenous, but not their class and educational preparedness. And it's how do you create something which is very cohesive? Can you? But what we can ensure is how they are in the classroom is respectful of each other, of each other's experience. We talk a lot about academic capital, but we should also talk about social capital.
Absolutely,
what people bring, which is so important. And I think as lecturers we need to be vigilant as to who seems to perhaps be friendless, isolated, not included, that all those voices are heard, and those whose voices are quieter, that we create the conditions where they can speak.
You know, 'cause the full-time students especially are really, really sort of vulnerable to that loneliness. With the foundation that I teach on as well, you know, we try and, right from the word go, we have a great 5-week unit which really is about group work and about building that community and that sense of belonging, because they're not traditional students that would come in, you know, they're given the opportunity to try university out. And we really bring, literally the first half an hour of every single session we do is an icebreaker. It's a group activity. It's something fun that isn't actually about the academic side. You know, we tie it into what we're doing and how it relates to the way we present ourselves or how observant we are. But it is just about having fun and getting the group to know each other. And last year I had quite a few students that lived in the private sort of student accommodation where they're in their apartments. And they were, you know, invested in the sessions, the whole sessions. They had their group of sessions. And it wasn't until about 6 weeks later when we were talking a bit more, and then they sort of said, oh, well, when the class finishes, everyone sort of goes off, and I don't really see anyone other than when we're in class. And they don't have that traditional halls experience because each flat has its own kitchen, each flat has its own space.
Totally self-contained.
So self-contained, so you wouldn't even see the people in your own corridor necessarily, or it's just a passing glance.
And I'm thinking you don't even bump into people on the way to the bathroom because they'll have their own en suite. So those shared social spaces don't exist in that environment.
It is very much, you know, whilst actually we're vigilant and we're seeing who is quiet in the class, but even then that doesn't tell you everything, because they were really amongst it all, and it looked like they had made really good friendship groups which worked, and it had done in class session, but it just wasn't there after we'd finished the 12 hours a week. We saw them that was really it.
And that, you know, that's such an excellent point, isn't it? And to what extent are we responsible for arranging those extracurricular activities? And as you were talking, Denise, what struck me was remembering a report done by the student National Union of Students, and it was called Opportunity Blocked, and it was about those students who feel quite lonely, quite isolated at university, maybe because they live in halls away from everyone else, self-contained flats, but more often than not because they're commuter students. They live at home with parents, or they have significant caring responsibilities. They have their own family. And, you know, also many of my students would work, sometimes almost full time, not for luxuries, but to pay rent and put food on the table. So, you know, it's very strong correlation from that study, which included many universities, of the link between progression and dropping out, or lack of progression and withdrawal, with feeling lonely, and, you know, the synergy between not being involved in extracurricular activities and having friends on the course, and, you know, being more at risk of dropping out.
And it's finding that balance, isn't it? Because, like you say, not everybody can do extra, you know, they can only do the hours that their timetable.
There's a real tension there, isn't there? They've come in for their classes, but otherwise they've got to work, or they've got to pick a child up from school, or they've got caring responsibilities, or they're travelling.
And I try and build in within, you know, one of my sessions throughout the first 12 weeks is literally, can we go as a group and go and get breakfast, or go and get a coffee, you know. I try and link it around Christmas as well, actually.
That's a really nice idea.
Everyone can feel involved, you know. I try and arrange the curriculum and what we cover, so I do have 2 hours that I can go, right, come on, let's just down tools and let's just go and be together and talk about what we need to.
That reminds me, it's a good point to bring in an idea we had from another lecturer who unfortunately couldn't be here, Anya Higgins, who's Senior Lecturer for Sports Management, and in her level 4 group, the student reps have created a birthday list during induction week, so all the students in their group get a birthday card and cake on their birthday, and they've already had 2 cards and cake delivered during seminars. I just think that's such a lovely thing, because it's recognising that you are you're not just a student on the course. You have a birthday, and actually maybe you'd rather not be at university on your birthday, but You are, so let's make it good.
I love that it's come from the student reps
Yeah,
as well. That they're the one
absolutely.
organising it.
They're
It's
driving
not
it.
all left, not
Yeah.
left, but it's not all seen as the lecturer trying to get everyone
That's
involved
right.
all
Yes,
the time.
and you know, and I was thinking actually, these things should be co-constructed with
Absolutely.
students. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I think particularly of the ways that I've worked with students on modules and on courses, and I would stress the importance of being consistent across
Yes.
course teams, and that students see that, but co-creating those roles of engagement. So how are we going to be together? And I think that all of us are given agency to call out things which are said that we feel offended by, inappropriate, and to talk it through. I mean, I teach sociology and education and nursing. So within that, you know, there are many examples and opportunities. But I think, you know, us modelling the way, but
Absolutely.
also not sweeping things under the carpet.
Yeah, that's just as
Back to
important.
the
isn't it?
safety and the voices heard. I think.
That safe space to say it's not acceptable,
Yeah.
regardless of whatever it is,
Yeah.
whether it's, you know, actually the way that you've taught us this
Yeah.
week is not acceptable, or there is something happening on a
Yeah.
deeper level.
Yeah.
They need to be able to say that
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
know that they'll be
definitely.
listened to.
And conversely, you know, to call students out if they have used language or expressed a view. So I think there is an educative value of that, but also sometimes it is for us to say, well, actually, I think we need to discuss that further.
And I think, I see definitely with our students, they definitely get braver on calling students out. Now, whether that is, you know, on inappropriate behaviour, which we don't really see a lot of, which is fortunate, but it could just be they're not engaging, you know, and it's no other reason than they are just not turning up, or they're not engaging. There's nothing else going on, and the students have got a lot more confident in actually saying, why are you not turning up? Why are you not contributing
That's
to
great.
our
Yeah.
experience as well?
And that, you know, I think it's back to the rules of engagement that, you know, timing, accountability, group work is responsible for so much angst, which leaves students scarred. You know, and I'm not exaggerating. You know, for years to come. And I think it is up for us to ensure that it is managed well, but then again, conflict is part of life, and actually how they resolve
how you
it
deal
and
with that,
learning to do that is very important. And when things get really rocky, it shouldn't always be for the lecturer to jump in and resolve it.
No,
It's
I
for
mean,
them
that's
to
the thing
find
about community,
yeah.
isn't it? If we're building a community, it isn't the lecturer telling everybody else what to do, it's everybody working together. I imagine most people have heard about the idea of community of practice, where you've got the novice learning from the master, but the novice is still participating. That's the whole point of it. And students aren't actually novices in the sense of being a student, they're actually the experts at being a student. And we can all learn from each other in that sense.
And they do bring so much to the table, you know, so much that we're constantly learning from, especially with their industry knowledge and their practice as well.
Absolutely,
So the construction, and I'm sure your industry is
Oh,
exactly the same.
yeah,
It changes so much.
absolutely. And it's up to you know it's back to the social capital, but also the nature of knowledge itself. And I love that you said communities of practice, and I you know, I'm a big advocate of that. That what is important about communities of practice is that they evolve naturally, and normally, and they can't be forced, but you see that evolution over a undergraduate degree course. So for example, in yacht design engineering, which our school
I imagine by the
offers,
time they get to level 6, they're really working almost on a par with the lecturer, because they've learnt so much and they've come into their confidence and they've got the skills and they've got that bigger picture, compared to level 4 where they're like, wow,
isn't it?
what do I do? Where's the tank?
It's a novice to advanced
Absolutely.
And it's
practitioner.
amazing, isn't it? It's that recognition of when they question you, when they all of a sudden go, actually, could that not be done a better way? And then you say, okay, tell me how.
Yeah.
And then you go, actually, yeah.
and you want that. You want, problem solvers who are creative, but also critical thinkers. That's the purpose of higher education and making a contribution to society. And you were saying about the birthday group, and we had also talked about WhatsApp groups. Equivalent on
Snapchat
on social media. As long as they are completely inclusive of everybody. But that can be very powerful. But also, our students, particularly on the cadet side, have set up study groups. They live, many of them, in halls, and they share facilities. So that has been very, very successful.
That is good, yeah. And again, that's something that's come from the students themselves, I imagine.
Yeah, completely
and
spontaneously.
They've decided that's how they want to work. And maybe it's our place as a university to enable that and say, here's some ideas, you can do that if you want to. You could even get them to negotiate their ground rules and make sure that it was being handled in a professional way. And then it's as inclusive.
And I think that you're right. What I realise that I'm always brought up short, and it's very humbling, just how capable and competent students are, and that's that whole adage of treat people better than you think they are, and they will be. So they're very capable of making decisions. Sometimes they may need us to come in and help them negotiate and choose the best options, but they have the best ideas around communities of practice often.
Yeah, definitely, because they don't know what they can't do yet, so they just come up with all the ideas.
And also they had their idea, especially for the first years as well, of coming to university. They had an idea of what university was going to be like for them.
Very true.
So actually, if, do you want to contribute and create that community as well that you were hoping for?
That idea that everybody is involved. I always like to say that you're not an observer of life, you are a participant of life. So how do we encourage that and harness that enthusiasm that got them through the door in the first place?
And it's allowing them the time to do that. I think it's not all just about the academic side when they're in class. It's actually allowing them to be a cohort and a group together as a community.
Yeah, that's why I really like your idea about the first half hour, about what's on top, catching up, that kind of time just to recalibrate, because I know that sort of we are too content driven. And actually, a lot has been written about the importance of how higher education feels. And it's only when people feel right and good that actually they can learn to the optimum.
Just to throw in a curveball, I'm thinking about the online learning space, and do we need to do things differently with things like flipped classroom or making better use of Sol? Are there things that we could do that we're not doing for whatever reason?
It's a struggle for the part-timers. So last year I tried to do a lot more of that flipped classroom approach to some degree, so not the whole flipped classroom approach, but I would set them a lot more reading to do outside of the classroom, a lot more work for them to be prepared so that we could just jump straight into the discussion as opposed to the material. And because of their work-life balance, they just did not have the time. And as I literally had a class of 30, 1 or 2 might engage with it.
Oh, that's frustrating,
and it just didn't work. And actually you need to look at the student and the cohort and say, we need to really appreciate, have they got time in the week? As much as they might want to do it, they might just have other commitments that won't allow them to put that time in.
It's a real conundrum, isn't it? And I used to think by the sheer force of my personality, I could kind of just, have everyone, fully engaged.
That didn't work for
I know, not quite powerful enough. And I think for me it's been about managing my expectations and being realistic. That there is some engagement in terms of so there's an expectation that they have to do 2 postings a week to a discussion forum, and that's I will follow that up if they don't, and then they have to engage in one or two activities, and those activities will be drawn on in class. So you know, there is a incentive to engage, and that takes a lot of effort. But I think it was in the modification and really thinking about the purpose of the flipped classroom. But certainly on our cadet program, we have gone for quality rather than quantity of hours. So our project that I'm doing with Dee, Catherine and Christina is really looking at how they engage, what can we learn from it, what they want, and what we want them to do with it. And I'm hoping some things are going to emerge
really
from that, which teaches more about community, you know, online communities.
And also what would be really interesting to see if you do sort of look at as part of your scope is actually when they engage, because you know the students that are coming through now work in such a different way to how traditional students or how we would have operated at different times as well. So that online platform gives them the opportunity to maybe at 11 o'clock at night to be the most engaged that they can be, and that's when they produce their best work.
And I think you're absolutely right, and because you know so many handheld devices, so if you're in the gym you can kind of do something, if you're you know in Sainsbury's you can do something, so it's you know like we take the learning environment everywhere with us.
I did read something recently that was really interesting, that whilst we all talk about how great we are at multitasking now and we have more opportunity, actually we're not multitasking.
No,
we are
really
flitting
not.
from one thing to the other and not giving anything 100%.
It's just little tiny pieces of attention spread out.
So whilst we know that is what they're used to, we need to actually provide them with a space that holds their interest as well, and actually stops them, because it's not healthy in the long run for them to be flittering from thing to thing, because when they get out in industry, you know,
it's not going to work.
It might not
like
have that way.
You know, and I think that's a fair point. So then perhaps do we return to this idea that it's back to quality, not quantity of contact time, and we should use that precious time when they are with us more purposefully
and personally, perhaps. That would be really nice. It's a very rough. It's a correlation. It's not. I'm not saying it's causation, but we have noticed that courses that tend to get high satisfaction marks on the use of Soul tend to have more resources on it. So I wonder if it is those students working late at night, they can go onto Soul and then, there's lots of stuff here, brilliant, I'll get on with things. I've got some time now. I didn't have time earlier when everybody was working in the library, but I can do it now. So it's providing space, isn't it, for everybody to work in the way.
And like you say, giving them maybe not everything available on Soul, but at least, you know, if there's an article or something that you found that you go, actually this might help you, and it could start their thinking process, rather than them going, right, I've got a little bit of time, I'll have a look, I can't find anything, it's going to take me ages to even start the ball rolling of where to look or what to think. At least that might then trigger
here's your way in, maybe you've got time to explore after that.
And I think Panopto has been phenomenal. That's been really appreciated. And also you can put the bookmarks on, so you can put you know, to something, you know, maybe it's a threshold concept which you're struggling with. You know, traditionally it's spiked the use of Panopto around exam time, but now we're seeing a much more consistent use, and I hope that continues, and that kind of actually it's a really good way of engaging with Soul.
Well, it's expanding that classroom community way beyond the classroom, because in a classroom it's there, it's spontaneous, it's happening, but you want to keep that going outside a bit as much as you can.
And I think in terms of inclusivity, because a number of our students, English is not their first language, so you know it's very democratic in its conception, which is why I love it.
It's been a really, I'm just seeing if there's anything that we've missed that is going to be, we've talked about most things, I think. The sense of belonging and ownership being really important. Ensuring everyone speaks the same language, not literally, but that metaphorical language. How do we ensure that everybody is up to speed and involved together? I mean, if you could just solve that right now.
That'd be fine. You know. I think in terms of academic language, that's a big hurdle for all of our students, and where we are so heavy on the part-timers, a lot of them are returning to study after being out of study for such a long time as well. So we often, sit down and let them chat amongst themselves and obtain their own understanding of what a brief might mean, or what's it saying, what's it asking you to do, and get them to share ideas, which actually I found we started introducing last year, and it was really, really worthwhile, because it really understood and it got them to talk rather than having to listen to me and say, well, this is what it means. They could sort of test it on each other if their understanding was correct, and then we would all share. So they each had a bit of the assignment brief to look at, and then we would all share what it meant, and then I would obviously put them in the right direction if it needed it. But it did improve the quality of the work that was being produced, because they understood what was really needed.
They were developing their own understanding of it. Oh, that's great. We are nearly out of time. I can't believe how fast it's gone. Is there anything that you'd like to sum up, any final message that you think is the most important for you?
For me, it's back to the inclusivity of communities, given that we have very diverse student groups, as we would expect, with widening participation. And I think the importance of having those very open conversations. If language is used, which I would feel it is not appropriate or is considered offensive, if there's a learning opportunity, and that can include kind of opening out to the whole class, and I see that as extremely important, because otherwise you have people sitting in that classroom who feel othered, who feel isolated, and we would be seen as educators as colluding if we do not.
So speaking up,
and if people want to hear more about that, please do contact me.
Thank you. Brilliant.
About teachable moments and being bold and brave.
Excellent. I like that.
I like that saying. For me, it would be very much that community is giving everybody in that community a sense of ownership and belonging, but also remembering that it needs to be flexible and adaptable, because each cohort we go to, so we can't use the same techniques necessarily every year, and it is something that evolves.
So knowing your students, understanding your students,
and letting it evolve naturally as well. So to see how much they want to engage or what they want to do is really useful.
That's great. I mean, I just keep coming back to something you said right at the beginning about someone like me, and that you can have so many different categories that you'd apply to yourself, but cut it all through and you're in this community, and those people are like you despite all of those areas of difference.
And I do want to shout out to my school, Warsash School of Maritime Science and Engineering, that I've won a very few women in the school, and I've been in that school a year, and I have found my tribe in a way that I hadn't expected, and it has all been to do with relationship building, and I do feel I am part of a community, certainly with the people I engage with on a daily basis,
ultimately
working to give the
model
students a good experience.
Just wanted
to say that.
Lovely. Thank you, that's great. And thank you very much indeed to Denise and Carol. This has been one of the most enjoyable livecast chats I've had. I think it's the 5th one. It's getting better. So thank you. That was really, really, really interesting. And I might even watch it back if I can bear the sound of my voice. So I hope you found that interesting as well. And next month we are going to talk in much more detail about online learning, and if we can be really clever with the tech, we're going to show off some new techniques as well. So watch this space, and thank you very much for joining us.